The light is shining on that deformity thing. The woman is so distorted that nobody can recognize her upper body anymore. Her flesh is swelling up like bubbles and oozing down. Samuel Lee opens his eyes wide, trembling as he looks at that pile of meat, and it seems like he isn't the only one. Everyone around him is equally terrified too. They are only separated by a glass door. But that woman is no longer human. She has turned into a monster with a mouth so big it touches the ground, wildly crawling towards them. Suddenly, there is a shrill scream that diverts its attention. Another group of people is screaming as they see the monster, and that scream triggers the crazed monster to rush toward them. The entire group inside the cabin can't help but be amazed by the unfolding situation. They can only hold on to each other, trembling. Outside the cabin, the remaining flesh of the monster still clings to it. The unfortunate raven's carcass is also stuck on the cabin's window. The group huddles in a corner, gasping for breath. Samuel Lee's hands tremble uncontrollably, and now even breathing seems difficult for them. Justin Kim screams in desperation, but is quickly silenced by Dai. He cautiously looks outside, fearing that the monster may return and take their life at any time. They all turn their gaze toward the gate once again. Reflecting on the horrifying scene they have just witnessed, Hebei burst into tears, regretting not helping that uncle earlier. Samuel Lee remains silent, and Dai disagrees with Hebei. If Samuel Lee hasn't locked the door earlier, they will all be dead by now. Neil Kang tremblingly opens the cabin's upper door, causing Dai to shout in protest. Neil Kang realizes that no one is outside anymore and wants to escape as quickly as possible, but it doesn't seem like a good idea. Samuel Lee secretly glances at Selena, who also appears terrified and trembling, but she quickly catches Samuel Lee's gaze. Startled, he stammers and asks about her condition. Selena quickly responds before burying her face in exhaustion. While the atmosphere on one side is still tensing, Dai is trying to prevent Neil Kang from leaving. Many people still want to find a hiding place, but now they want to run out to destroy themselves? Just sitting here and waiting for rescue, Dai said. Hain Kang's hand trembles, but her mouth blames Dai for causing all this trouble. She insists on putting all the blame on Dai. Dai shouts in frustration, feeling unfairly accused after helping them so much. The girls defend Hain Kang, while Hebei is telling them to stop. Dai stands helplessly, and Hain Kang sobs uncontrollably. Suddenly, the walkie-talkie in the cabin makes a sound, causing everyone to turn and look. Finally, someone contacts them. While the group is still surprised, the intermittent sound from the walkie-talkie continues, and the cabin feels silent. Dai sits down exhaustedly and sighs with relief, while Hebei tries to communicate with others, but no one responds. They all know that they have lost contact with their other friends. Selena bursts into tears, and Hebei hugs her. Samuel Lee struggles to breathe and looks away. Dai anxiously looks outside. Now the situation is unpredictable. Dai is sure he will head straight home when they get down from there. Suddenly, there is a loud noise above the cabin, causing everyone to panic once again. The cabin stops moving, and they frantically call for help through the walkie-talkie. Fortunately, it quickly starts moving again, the cabin getting closer to the ground, and the scene unfolding in the city becomes clearer in their eyes. Everyone looks fearfully at the traces left by the monster on the buildings. Inside the doors are bodies that haven't fully transformed yet, lying amidst a pile of slimy flesh, no longer recognizable as human beings. As the cabin glides past the buildings, everyone stands in silence. They are too exhausted to scream anymore. Suddenly, the cabin passes by a bizarre creature, and Samuel Lee comes face to face with it. He sees every tiny movement it makes and is shocked when it turns its mouth toward them. While he is taken aback, the cabin suddenly shakes violently. Everyone struggles to maintain their balance and screams as everything around them trembles until the cabin crashes into a wall and comes to a complete stop. The sunlight shines on the crashed cabin, glass doors shatter, and everyone falls from the impact. Samuel Lee and Dai try to get up, but seem to be in pain. Dai gasps and screams in despair, realizing their situation is worse than expected. Everyone tries to assess the situation, but the truth is too apparent. Selena is struggling to breathe when suddenly she sees something in front of the cabin. It slowly approaches, revealing its twisted and bubble-covered form. Selena screams for everyone to look towards the front of the cabin. Its hand touches the glass door, causing everyone to start to panic. It gapes to let out an unknown squeal. It slowly enters the cabin through the broken glass, its body oozing inside. The group panics as they see it getting closer and closer. Its flesh falls heavily onto the floor and slowly reforms into its original shape. Dai desperately tries to break the sturdy glass of the cabin door to escape, but his strength is not enough. Samuel Lee turns to look and sees that the monster has entered most of the body. They all rush towards the door, fearing for their lives if they are even a second too late. As they see the creature form, panic and screams fill the air. Dai is furious and manages to kick open the cabin door, allowing everyone to scramble out. Justin Kim calls before they can catch their breath because the monster is approaching them. They have no choice but to run again. Samuel Lee runs and looks back at the beast, crawling out from the broken door. Suddenly, Selena gets caught in something and falls. He turns around and grabs her sleeve, pulling her away as fast as he can. The front runners frantically run down the stairs, one step after another. They run so madly forward that they forget to breathe. Dai runs to the front door, but is even more alarmed when he sees the scene ahead. There are more monsters inside, and everyone runs over without understanding what is happening. But Dai stops them. Now they are really out of the way. Behind one is chasing, in front, another one sees them. Samuel Lee and Selena in the back are running, but they have to stop suddenly. Selena can't run anymore. Samuel Lee looks down and sees that her leg is bleeding a lot. Samuel Lee apologizes in panic, thinking it was his fault, but it seems like it wasn't him. Selena thanks him for not leaving her behind. Before Samuel Lee can respond, there is a scream from below as Justin Kim runs back up towards them, confusing both of them. Dai runs behind and curses at him. They must run back up to the second floor because the first floor is filled with monsters. They look at the empty second floor, seemingly untouched by the creatures. They hide near the door and finally dare to rest inside. Outside the staircase, the monster slowly follows the trail of blood left behind. Back to the friends on the second floor, Hain Kung cries and calls her mother, grateful that there is still a mobile signal. However, the internet is flooded with information about the monsters, and Dai calls emergency services, but still no answer. Neil Kang stands near the glass doors, silently looking outside. Samuel Lee manages to contact his parents and informs them of their location, being told to stay put. The girls are worried about Selena's injury, which has worsened. While Samuel Lee is still looking at Selena, Justin Kim asks to borrow some money from him. They go to a vending machine to buy water, where Justin Kim breaks down in tears and regrets joining this trip. Meanwhile, Samuel Lee considers himself lucky that both of them are still alive. In this situation, he even thinks about being thanked by his crush. Suddenly, Samuel Lee notices Selena's blood trail on the floor from running all that way. He follows the footprints and looks outside at the slimy substance surrounding them. As he looks up, he faces a monster that is now bigger and more deformed than before. It opens its mouth to let out an indiscernible scream, but Samuel Lee remains frozen until it charges towards him with a second scream. Everyone was in the room and turned around in horror when they saw a monster suddenly appearing outside the door. Samuel luckily dodged the attack earlier and was trying to stand up. He shouted, making Justin also panic and run after him. The whole group watched the monster coming into the room and started running around everywhere. The monster chased after Samuel Lee and Justin. Everyone else focused on running away, but Selena fell behind and was getting closer to the monster. The exit door was right in front. They all pushed each other running through the door, then climbed up the stairs. Justin stopped to catch his breath. Dai impatiently choked Justin, making everyone come over to stop him. But the scene ahead was very familiar, nowhere other than the cabin from earlier. The entrance and exit of each floor were all connected, so they had run in a circle and returned back to the old spot. Hein Kang came afterwards. Before they could even breathe a sigh of relief, they realized there were still people left behind. On the second floor, Selena was hiding behind a wall. The monster was crawling around looking for people. Not only her, Heibe was also hiding nearby. Both were stuck here because they couldn't run as fast as the others. The two tried to sneak out towards the door. The monster didn't see them, so they had to act quickly. The wound on Selena's leg was still bleeding. The monster seemed to have found something and turned back towards the two girls. Meanwhile, the rest of the group had to run back to find the two girls. Dai was annoyed that they had to return to this place. Samuel Lee saw Selena hiding behind the wall. The monster was already right behind her. Looking at the terrifying reflection of the monster in the mirror also made her panic. Selena secretly looked back, and the monster had already opened its huge mouth and rushed at her. Now the chance of dying was very high, but Samuel Lee had opened the door and rushed in. He ran around and shouted loudly to attract the monster's attention. It saw him like a delicious piece of meat, immediately changed direction, and continuously attacked him. He shouted while running outside. Selena was still standing there, stunned. Samuel Lee hurriedly climbed the stairs. Looking back, the monster was madly rushing towards him, making him run away in panic. He ran towards the door, then used all his strength to close it. Looking at the cabin, he panted heavily. The monster seemed to have changed direction. He decided to go back down, although tired, but he still smiled at himself. Samuel Lee went back and opened the door, but the room was empty. No one was there anymore. He looked here and there. Looking out the window, he saw his friends had gotten outside already. Seeing them trying to help each other escape, he was truly surprised. Selena looked back and saw Samuel Lee standing there. She immediately turned her face away, then ran with the group outside, ignoring Samuel Lee, who was still trapped in the building, leaving him standing there, full of confusion. Samuel Lee hurriedly ran in a different direction. Looking outside, he saw the monster was still there. He just opened his eyes wide and panted at that scene. He got left behind. He looked at where the glass door was smashed, then frantically texted everyone. He also tried calling, but no one picked up. He was truly desperate because other than the emergency texts, no one else contacted him anymore. Suddenly, there was beeping continuously outside. Samuel Lee was startled and turned back. In the bathroom across, there were sounds of cursing. Justin was sitting in there continuously scolding Justin. While not knowing what to do, someone suddenly called out Justin's name, making him panic. Samuel Lee knocked on the door to confirm if it was Justin. Justin also doubted, opened the door, and it really was the right person. The two met again, and Samuel Lee cried. Samuel was happy, while Justin was annoyed inside. Samuel Lee even rushed to hug Justin tightly, making Justin shout and avoid him. The two walked while surveying the situation. The monster packs were no longer around here. Justin was scared, so he hid very carefully. The surveying was all done by Samuel Lee. Looking back at where the glass door was broken, Justin shouted that the others had escaped through there. Justin's words made him remember Selena's eyes, the scene of them escaping and leaving him behind. While Justin kept whispering in his ear, Samuel Lee wondered why Justin didn't go with them. The two argued. The afternoon came. The two guys sat in the corner of the room, not knowing what the future would be like. Justin became more and more desperate while Samuel Lee still tried calling 119, but completely unsuccessful. Samuel Lee, comforted that his parents would come soon, suddenly his mom sent him some kind of link. He clicked it. It was a news report about an unidentified bacterial strain that was spreading very quickly. The whole country was trying to find a way to stop it. The problem was the two were still trapped here. Suddenly there was a loud siren. It was a fleet of fire trucks coming to put out a fire nearby. Looking at the fire, Samuel Lee suddenly had an idea in his head. He stood up and carried it out immediately. Justin wondered about his actions. Samuel Lee wanted to try setting a fire. He ran to find a trash can, then tried to find a lighter to start the fire. Justin scolded Samuel Lee for being crazy. But wouldn't the fire department come to put out the fire if there was a fire? Suddenly Justin looked outside and saw something. Samuel Lee found a lighter, but it was out of gas already. Justin suddenly panted, urging Samuel Lee to light the fire quickly. Outside the building, behind the cabin, a monster had appeared out of nowhere. Samuel Lee also looked outside. The monster was already at the entrance. They were completely trapped now. The news report rang out from the phone. The government was trying to resolve the aftermath caused by the unidentified bacterial cells. Following that were scenes of people filming traces of the monsters. They were all over the city and stuck to buildings. The monster packs lay all over the streets, trapping many people. After Samuel Lee's mom watched the news, she panicked and said to her husband that the road ahead was blocked already. Samuel Lee's mom called him but couldn't get through. The two started to panic quite a bit. On Samuel Lee's side, he and Justin were still frozen, looking at the monster at the door. Samuel Lee panted looking at that freak, trying to assure it wouldn't come here. It still stood still in front of the entrance. Justin thought his heart would drop out. Samuel Lee noticed its cells were growing and expanding more and more, but the more he looked at its body, Justin already threw up. But Justin quickly urged Samuel to light a fire and call for rescue. Samuel Lee looked at the empty lighter in his hand, then decided to do it. Outside the building, behind the cabin, Samuel carefully went out from there. He went outside while Justin stayed to observe the monster. Going back earlier, Samuel thought he couldn't light a fire in the room because the chance of them dying from suffocation rather than being rescued was higher. Samuel decided to go up to the third floor to carry out the plan. The building structure all connected to each other. One person would go up to the third floor to light the fire, the other stayed to observe the monster's actions. Currently, Justin was still anxiously and fearfully worrying about his own tiny life. Samuel Lee tried to create sparks from that lighter. While doing it, he still thought about Justin, wondering if the plan would succeed. Finally, there was a spark. Samuel Lee quickly lit the big bag on fire. Suddenly, a lump of meat appeared above his head. As he looked up, there was a monster that growled. Samuel Lee saw it and was also scared, immediately running away. It rushed to Samuel Lee's spot. The distance was quite close, making him even more panicked, throwing the burning plastic bag towards the monster. As he was about to reach the door, the painful cries of the monster made Samuel Lee stop. Getting hit by the flames made it stop crying. The fire slowly engulfed it, while Samuel Lee stood there, witnessing this scene, and was surprised. Justin called him. Before Samuel could talk about what just happened, Justin shouted that the monster on the second floor disappeared already. It was coming up to Samuel Lee's spot. Looking behind, there was nothing yet. Samuel talked about using fire to burn one of them, but because of that, the flames had spread to the hallway, so now they couldn't get out of here. Justin still urged him to quickly go back to the second floor. Looking back, it was still a quiet scene. Samuel panted once more. The shadow of the huge monster appeared. He opened his eyes wide, looking at the monster approaching, but the old path was now flooded with fire and the corpse of the small monster from earlier. Samuel Lee quickly took off his shirt and lit it on fire. The monster was not far from him anymore. It charged madly at Samuel Lee. He threw the still burning shirt to whip and hit its body, making the monster painfully cry out. Samuel Lee quickly ran the other way. He panted, looking at the monster still there and using the shirt to defend itself. At that moment, he realized if they wanted to live, the only way was to burn all these monsters to death. Then he threw the fiery shirt towards the monster, but the shirt flew and landed next to it. The wind blew, so he missed. The monster was growing taller and charged at Samuel Lee again. Just when he thought it was the end, a small, burning paper roll was launched at the monster, making it fall down, crying out. Before Samuel Lee could get his bearings, Justin was already here somehow and frantically threw the burning paper rolls at the monster. Its body was hit by fire, so it couldn't move yet. Justin shouted at Samuel, also making him frantically run after. The two grabbed their pants and ran down the stairs like they were about to die. They ran hurriedly to the point of forgetting. The third floor had already started billowing black smoke. Justin Kim was running when he encountered traces of the monster's flesh left behind. He tried to avoid them, but fell down the stairs, nearly sticking to a slimy patch in front of him, so he quickly backed away. Samuel Lee ran over to help Justin Kim stand up, but Justin Kim breathed tiredly, while blaming Samuel Lee for being useless and making things worse. Hearing those words, Samuel Lee also got annoyed and argued back, leading to a fight between them in the middle of the stairs. Just as he was about to say something, Samuel Lee saw another monster right below the next flight of stairs. The two panicked, as it seemed to have noticed the human presence. It made some small noises, then rushed up the stairs, heading straight to where they were arguing, making them have to run desperately again. Both of them ran into a room, then quickly shut the door. Looking at it, clinging onto the door while thinking how it could get in, the monster split its small cells to squeeze through the door gaps, making their eyes open in shock. It seemed to be nearly inside. The two quickly ran the other way, while the monster was slowly entering. They ran to the opposite side. The closer they got to the door, the more scenery outside appeared, making them have to stop. Looking at the slimy mess flooding everywhere, the whole city was covered so densely that they could see how dire the situation outside had become. Suddenly, the loud fire alarm rang, startling the two. They were breathless from looking at the blaring fire alarm system nearby. Smoke from the third floor had already billowed outside. Samuel Lee tried to find more fire. They had to hold on at all costs. In their panic, Samuel Lee desperately begged while continuously flicking the lighter. Justin Kim had brought paper to start the fire, but still no flames appeared. The situation was very dangerous when Justin saw another monster jump in through the broken glass door, making Samuel Lee fall back in shock. It was reforming its body and crawling around where the others had broken the glass to escape. Justin Kim ran over shouting and cursing while grabbing a whole potted plant, throwing it at the monster. The potted plant flattened the monster, making it stop taking shape. The two were still surprised, seeing it was actually effective. Justin Kim panted and proudly bragged to Samuel Lee. Seeing that, Samuel Lee also went along with him, but immediately panicked when he saw the earlier monster slowly standing up in front of Justin Kim again. Samuel Lee shouted loudly at Justin Kim. At the time he turned to look, the monster immediately charged at him. Samuel Lee stepped back. Justin Kim was having slimy mucus stuck around his face. Standing behind, Samuel Lee tried flicking the lighter again. The situation is really bad now. Justin Kim screamed in fear as he was slowly sucked into the monster's body. Samuel Lee begged for a flame of hope to appear right now. Justin Kim started crying and calling Samuel Lee for help. Looking at the monster devouring his friend, but he was incapable and couldn't step forward to help or stop it. Samuel Lee was very anxious. Finally, a flame lit up from the lighter. Hearing the sound coming from the monster outside the door, it had completely gotten inside. He was frozen while seeing the monster moving closer. Samuel Lee had to act quickly because now he had no way to retreat. To